to talk about graphing quadratic equations in vertex form. Why is it called vertex form? Because just by looking at the equation, we can figure out our vertex. For factored form and standard form, we had to do some algebra to figure out the vertex, but not vertex form. Well, you just read the equation and it'll be there. So our vertex form is y equals a times the quantity of x minus h squared plus k. So our vertex is h and k. Notice that h is negative, so we change the sign for h, right, whether it's positive, negative, and k is positive, so we keep the sign for k. That's just how the formula works. So our axis of symmetry, that's just our h value, because remember, if we have the x or h value of our vertex, that's our axis of symmetry. The role of a is the same as factored in standard form. Positive opens up, negative opens down. The larger a is, the more narrow your graph is. The smaller a is, the wider your graph is. Let's practice just looking at that vertex form for a second. Let's practice writing the equation of a parabola. So they gave us our a value and then our h and k. So remember, the sign for h will flip, the sign for k will stay the same. So if I write down my y equals a times x minus h squared plus k, what's this going to look like? Y equals 5 times x minus a negative 1 squared plus 4. Well, here's why we say that the sign for h flips. Minus a negative. What does minus a negative really mean? That really means plus. So this is really y equals 5 times x plus 1 squared plus 4. There's our vertex form. Now would be a good time to pause, see if you can do the rest of these. All right, well, here's my h, here's my k. Y equals 1 times x minus 2 squared. And I keep the sign for k, so I'm going to subtract 3. Letter C, a is a half, h is 0, k is 8, y equals, a third, not a half, x minus 0 squared plus 8. What is x minus 0? That's just x. So really we could write this as y equals a third times x squared plus 8. That's a special case, right? Where since we're not adding or subtracting anything to x, we would just know that that means the h value is 0. Letter D is another special case. What happens when k is 0? Well, y equals negative 1 times x plus 7. Since the negative, my sign's going to flip, plus 0. Adding 0 doesn't really change anything. I don't need to have that as part of my equation. There's my vertex form. Okay, so h is the x value of the vertex, k is the y value of the vertex. If you've got that down, we are ready to graph. All right, graph the parabola. Y equals 2 times x minus 1 squared plus 3. Well, a is 2, so we know this is going to open up. Vertex, that's easy. Here's my h, here's my k. H is 1, k is 3. Axis of symmetry. Well, if we know the x value of the vertex, we know the axis of symmetry. The y-intercept, we do actually have to do some work. So let's go ahead and put what we have on our graph first. So I have the point 1, 3 is my vertex. I know 1 is my axis of symmetry. And then here's 1, 3. All right, so if I want to find my y-intercept, I know that that's the point where x is 0. So I have to plug 0 into my vertex form. Notice that finding the y-intercept is a little bit different for all 3 forms, just like finding the vertex is different for all 3 forms. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. Now we do our order of operations. We do our squared first. Negative 1 squared is a positive 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. Our y-intercept is the point 0, 5. 0, 5. And that makes sense, right? Because we said this was going to open up, and it looks like it'll open up. Then I mirror that, and I get the point 2, 5. Well, of course, we need 5 points to make this parabola, so same as factored in vertex form, we get to pick an x value. I noticed that we already used 1, 0, and 2, so either negative 1 or 3 would be a good x value. I'm going to pick 3. I substitute that into my equation, and I use my order of operations to find y. 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay, remember I got to do my exponent first. 2 squared is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. and 8 plus 3 is 11. 3, 11. That's not going to fit on my graph, but I can estimate where that would be just off my graph. And then I mirror that 1, 2, 1, 2 away. So it looks like my other point would be -1, positive 11. Hey, look, there's our parabola. So some similarities to vertex and between vertex, standard, and factored form, and then some differences. The main difference for all of the forms is how you find that vertex in the first place. Let's try another one. Again, vertex form is the easiest form to find the vertex in because it just gives it to you. All right, y equals -1 times x plus 5 squared plus 2. Well, a is -1, so we know this is going to open down. Then my vertex, here's my h, here's my k. Well, remember, h flips, so since it's plus 5, I know my x value is -5. Since it's plus 2, I know my y value is positive 2. We change the x value, or h. We keep the y value, or k. Which means my axis of symmetry is -5. So I'm going to go ahead and put all of that on my graph, because I like to graph as I go along. If you like to graph everything at the end, you can do that instead. So here's my vertex at -5, positive 2. And put that in my table. Okay, now I'm ready for my y-intercept. Well, again, to be the y-intercept, x has to be 0. So I don't think this is going to fit on my graph. Look at how far away that is. So we can try it and see, but I don't think that this is going to end up fitting on my graph. So if I substitute 0 in, we end up with 0 plus 5. All right, well, 0 plus 5 is just 5. My order of operations, 5 squared, is 25. So I get -25 plus 2 is -23. Definitely not fitting on my graph. But I can tell that this is, in fact, opening down. So I could adjust my scale if I wanted to. I'm not actually going to. I'm just going to say, hey, it's like way down here. Just for time. I'm not going to. We'll just stick with that. Okay. And then we could mirror that. So if 0, -23 is on our graph, we actually know that -10, -23 is on our graph if we think about mirroring that. But we should actually get some points that fit on the graph that we have here. So let's pick an x value that is close to -5. You know, -4 or -6 are both close to -5, so I could pick either of those. I'm going to go with -4 because I can. Again, it doesn't really matter what you pick because you'll find a point no matter what x value you go with. I know -4 plus 5 is a positive 1. I know that 1 squared is a positive 1. I know that a -1 times 1 is a -1, and -1 plus 2 is positive 1. We have the point -4, positive 1. And if we mirror that, it gives us the point -6, positive 1. So I'm going to kind of estimate. Oh, there's my parabola. Estimate, there's my parabola. If I wanted to, I could plug in, pick another x value to plug in to find 2 more points that fit on my graph. But again, for time, we are going to call this good. Let's do one more example for vertex form. It would be a good idea to pause and see if you can do this for yourself. See what you're understanding, what you might have questions on. All right, so our a value is -2. This is going to open down. Our h value and our k value, well, we change the sign here, so that's a positive 4. We keep the sign, keep for k. That's a positive 1. So our axis of symmetry is 4. My y-intercept, if I plug 0 in, 0 minus 4. Okay. Again, for time, I'm going to do this a little bit faster than I would, but you can always pause to check what's happening. Hopefully you're able to do this without watching the video. Again, -31. That's not going to fit on my graph here, but that's okay. So my vertex 4, 1. Here's my axis of symmetry 4. Here's my vertex 4, positive 1. I'm going to put that in my table. I can put my y-intercept in my table. And I'm going to pick another x value. I'm going to pick 3 because 3 is close to 4. Again, be a good idea to pause and see if you can do this math for yourself. -1 squared is positive 1. -2 times 1 is -2. Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. 3, negative 1. And it looks like it's opening down, so that makes sense. Then if we mirror that, we get the point 5, negative 1. I'm actually going to pick one other point just to get something that fits on my graph here. So I already have 3 and 5. I'll pick 2. So again, good idea to pause and see if you can do this math for yourself. I know that 2 minus 4 is negative 2. I know that negative 2 squared is positive 4. I know that negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, and negative 8 plus 1 is negative 7. So it looks like we have the point 2, negative 7, and if we mirror that, we would have the point of 6, negative 7. Hey, look at that. What a beautiful parabola. So that's